Let's call it what it is. I think it was OpenAI hiring Dave Aitel was an awesome sign to the security industry that OpenAI was taking that side of things
It was
not
not going to
just
be all bullshit. I mean,
not
that's the
just seriously. It's not all bullshit. And I've come on this, on this podcast before and said, damn, like talking to the people inside OpenAI kind of feels like Apple culty and lame. That was not the vibe this time around. And I fucking
but
loved
I
it.
don't think that was the OpenAI people in that room though. I mean, the OpenAI
No,
culture, but
no.
that's a different topic.
No,
Yeah.
no. Look, I won't speak to the larger culture, but let's say OpenAI, as far as security people are concerned, is not that anymore. And Apple still is, right? Like, so you look at them getting someone like Dave Aitel and then giving them free reign, it signals to the security industry, we're taking this shit seriously. We actually want to play and we want to make an outsized impact. Okay, let's stop teasing it, right?
Costin, is
Aardvark,
this man going to tell us what Aardvark is?
was about to do it. You just stopped me. Fuck it. Let's go to a different story. No, okay.
IOX, man. Where's the
IOX.
IOX? Tell
So
us the IOX.
The IOX are actually in GitHub commits. I think Aardvark is a really meaningful thing. So Aardvark is a model of some sort, some kind of reasoning model that has been A, fine-tuned, and B, given all the right tools and a lot of really interesting engineering that we don't
Internal project,
necessarily
right?
know.
An internal OpenAI private thing. Yes.
It's an internal OpenAI private thing, and it may stay an internal OpenAI private thing for the time being. But essentially, what Dave did was get this model and start. He trained it. He figured out how this shit was supposed to work, and he started turning it on open source repositories on the internet, and like big, well-established ones: OpenSSH, Postgres, and what else did he mention? Damn, I'm forgetting the other one, but PHP.
PHP.
And this thing is going through these well-established code bases, and it was actually finding bugs that then Dave and folks were validating and then sending the reports in. So we started to get some semblance of where this was going a few weeks back when we start to see screenshots of like commits for fixes that go reported by OpenAI security team, reported by, so one of them actually said reported by Aardvark, and we were like,
That's where I first saw it.
A couple
Yes.
of people who were paying close attention were like Mike Hom was like, yo, what the fuck just happened, right? Like there's people who know this space well enough who are like, some shit just went down, and frankly, some shit just went down. Like this is a meaningful moment. Part of, I wish Dave Aitel's talk would be public, because what it started to show was something that we've been missing in this debate for a long time, which is an understanding of how bugs are getting introduced into these big code bases. Think about something like PHP or OpenSSH. The commits, the changes, the growth of this project is openly visible in incremental steps. That's what GitHub does for you. So you can watch a whole history of people, like different, who did it, who committed this line at this time, and how the project grew. So now that you have this external evaluator, this model that can look at that code and go, there's a bug here, there's a bug here, there's a bug here, there's a bug here, there's a bug here. And mind you, we're talking bugs. We're not talking exploits. We're talking bugs, right? There's a difference between a vulnerability and an exploit. Suddenly you start to get an understanding of the dynamics of how bugs are introduced into code bases. So Dave Aitel literally pulled up a chart and said, well, what we understand with Aardvark now is that there's an average of 1.5 to 1.7% commits that introduce bugs into a code base at a steady rate. I've never heard that shit before. And it's fucking fascinating. You're basically saying there is a rate of entropy at which these code bases are steadily degrading. It's a 1.7%. And like maybe we'll scale this out and you find out that it's higher, that it's lower, whatever. But there is, for people who want to understand and what it is that we're dealing with when it comes to open source projects, why this is so problematic, is there is an entropy that's being continually introduced into this code base by virtue of people growing the code base and working on it, and there isn't an equivalent counter force that's maintaining or pushing back against that entropy. So in a sense, this is the first introduction of a mechanism that could possibly start to account for that in a way that is scalable. because nothing the government ever said about open source security ever made any fucking sense. Who are these people that are fixing the things? Who are these people who no one is paying, who's going to spend all their time just reading through 400,000 lines of OpenSSH commits every single day trying to fix this shit? That was never going to work, which is why they espoused all this Rust bullshit so heartily, because we told them, oh, if they write it in Rust, then it's perfect. You go, oh, perfect. Get everyone to write everything in Rust. You go, nah, bro, like that's not it. But you needed this like God from the machine to show up.
Is it a fuzzer? Because we know I've seen the Google open source team doing fuzzing and on open source projects. What's the difference?
And that was the big point. This is not a fuzzer, which was a good contrast against all these fucking academic presentations where you see people, oh, the LLM can run the fuzzer and then the LLM will get the bug out. And you're like, yeah, cool. But all you're saying is like the LLM can orchestrate these tools that were kind of brute forcing the problem. So that's not an understanding. That's just trying to automate the brute forcing.
What is it doing? Some sort of reasoning that goes back to
it's reasoning with tools. So it's static analysis where you've got a reasoning model that's been fine-tuned for this stuff that has been unhobbled and has access to tools. So it knows how to like break the problem apart into, ways that can be meaningfully put into a context window. It can write some Python code. It can test if this, it can test that code in this and that way. It can search the internet. It can do X, Y, and Z. And of course, like the real magic comes in the fine tuning and some of that like figuring out what the scaffolding should look like so that this thing can get reliable results, right? Like that's the issue with stochastic systems. It's a probabilistic system. You need to figure out what kind of harnessing is going to get you an ever increasing rate of success because the thing is not deterministic. That's where the true work comes into it. And that's why you would hear me like talking and obsessing over the reversing side of this, which is like an analogous issue. Like Dave Eitel just went and did some, the shit that we were talking about, because fuzzing and all that, like you always had this notion, the same way as like running malware through a sandbox where you go, yeah, we got this output. Do I trust it? I don't know, because I don't know if like the malware ran, if it had anti-VM stuff that we didn't figure out, if it was waiting for a specific date, if it would check if it needed an IP, if it wanted to see if you were on a Russian system in order to unlock all of its capabilities. And like, I think only one sandbox I've ever heard of, Joe Sandbox, was the one that like would try to like sort of force these control flow in like different ways so that you would get that sense of certainty. But essentially, that's what comes with not doing static analysis. Dynamic analysis is a bit easier, but you have this uncertainty that you don't actually understand the code base. You don't actually understand everything that could happen. You just kind of rammed it through and you go, okay, I've got a more or less understanding of what's going on. Like I can work with this. It's a functional thing, but it's not an understanding of the code base. Static analysis, it's like the Agosha school of reversing. Like the only way you're going to do it is you get smacked with a ruler if you pull out the debugger, and you got to just go through IDA. And that's what Aardvark is essentially doing in its own way. It has Binary Ninja tool, as a tool. It can write Python. It can write, all these sort of different things to validate. It can search. And it turns out you start to find all kinds of fucking bugs. So like
that humans couldn't find?
I think the issue here is,
this is what I'm trying to figure out. Is this automating and removing how many humans in the loop, and how many humans are still involved with the validation on the back end?
So, and there you're asking the right question. So we shouldn't think about it as replacing. Like I think any arguments about replacement with AI
so
are
you're saying this
short-sighted.
work isn't being done. This reasoning over code isn't being done at all right now.
Yeah,
this
it
is
was
like
not
a brand
being
new
done.
thing. Okay.
That's my point. And that was my point with the government thing about open source security, right? Like we kept dreaming that's like the lie of open source. There are all these, there's this crowd of magical people who are all crowdsourcing, revising of a giant code base. Like we're all splitting it among 400,000 people. Everybody reviewed the code base. In reality, nobody reviewed the fucking code base. What Aardvark is doing essentially is allowing us to scale a certain amount of evaluative power to do things that were not being done because the ROI, the return on investment of having a human being read every fucking commit with a fine-tooth comb to understand how it fits into the code base. Does it introduce this, whatever? Like there's small bugs. There's one of the ones they showed is like, oh, there was a plus here, inside of a loop that meant that you were kind of like corrupting memory in a certain way. It's like simple, but I was staring at that code the whole fucking time. I'm like, I don't know that I would have caught that. I would have had to sit there and like really reason and like, okay, it's a loop and it was supposed to do 1, but now it's actually doing 2 in this way. Like, all right, cool. The point being, it's not worth my time to do this for every single line, but it is worth compute time to have this machine do it. And then you get into the real problem now, which is it's taking longer. There are fewer bugs reported than there are bugs found because it's taking them way longer to validate that the bugs are legit and document them and whatever.
It's not some hallucination, right?
Well, it not even just a hallucination, but is it really a bug, right? Like, does it think it's a bug, but when you go look in the code base, it actually isn't. It's doing what it was supposed to be doing. Like, you need human beings to like go in and validate and evaluate. I think that will change with time to some extent, but I think it goes to show like a bigger dynamic in the anything LLM AI space, which is QA is going to go from being the shittiest job that you put the worst people in because you have to do it, but nobody wants to work QA, to being one of the most important jobs, which is
with unlimited resources, right?
Right. I mean, look, now the thing is, this thing could very well be amazing and it will automate 90% of amazing shit. But we need to figure out where the 10% is where it's failing. So all of a sudden, QA is not the shittiest job. It's where you need the most specialized people.
Costin, I've always been skeptical of these big OpenAI, big tech bros, the San Francisco bros, like Juanito calls them, making all these outlandish promises around removing entire bug classes with AI and so on. Does this read to you like that, or is this something somewhat impressive that we're actually tackling a place that human work isn't going into anyway? And just to bookend that, you have in the past said, listen, watch these OpenAI and these big AI companies because these guys are well positioned to really, really get monetization around security or build security tooling or build threat intelligence tooling. Is this something that is kind of what you were expecting to come out of those?
Well, remember what I said the last time, which was that I think AI models should be extremely good at finding bugs. I think for people developing AI models, it should be pretty easy to train them on things like vulnerability databases, exploit databases, and just let them run and try to find more bugs. So in a way, it's good to have confirmation that this is not only possible, but this has actually been implemented and it's working. And in the end, it's working because it's finding bugs they are reporting in these projects. I think it's a very interesting experiment. And I think probably the emphasis here is that it works on open source projects, meaning that they're starting with the things for which they have the source code. And of course, like the holy grail will be to find these bugs in compiled code and to be able to identify vulnerabilities as well as supply chain attacks. I think that would be also very interesting. Now, of course, I have a lot of questions for Juan, and I think it would have been probably amazing to be at that talk. So, like, for instance, one of them would be, what are they planning? Let's say that they're starting to find hundreds of these bugs. Like they solve the problem of confirming the exploitability. They get another model which becomes very good at developing the exploit, so weaponizing the code.
Full chain, yeah.
And then you have both the gun and the bullet. So like you just need to put them together. The question, what do you do with it?
My question
do you sell
is,
them? Do you report them to vendors for free? Like all of them?
So
what do you do? How do you
read my mind?
How do you make money?
I'd love to answer, and I think I'm being ranty to the point of like monopolizing the discussion. So do push back. But like, there's two really important things here. One of them is clearly OpenAI is taking it seriously. It's taking security seriously beyond this, right? Like they hired Dave Aitel, and they've clearly given him carte blanche to do cool shit, and it's paying off. But they're going further into it. What was announced at the very end of the whole thing was
you buried the lady?
dude, I've got so much. I just like I would be lecturing for 2.5 fucking. I took notes so that I wouldn't forget, you guys. I came prepared for one time. I came prepared.
I always interrupt you when you're about to drop the bomb.
I know, which is why like I'm just not gonna. No,
Admit you use the glasses to record everything.
Yeah. I was transcribing a lot of shit too, just to not forget. But like, it's mostly just me talking. Anyways, come on. Matt Knight, who is their CISO and is like a legit security dude who's been around like for a while doing cool shit, announced that was his last day as CISO at OpenAI. And we were all, you had like 30 seconds of like, oh my God, is he leaving? And you go, no. He's transitioning to a technical role again to focus on security. So you're literally shifting someone from your C-suite, which I think is a strong endorsement of saying, hey, we were willing to do it with, we were willing to invest and bring Dave, and clearly it's working well. So now like let's index further. So I think there's two ways to take that, which is, I think as a vendor in the security space, your ears better be perking up because the dynamics are about to change. They've already changed and they're going to change further, which I think is really interesting. To be honest, in an industry defined by failure, I will take categorical change, even if it means discomfort. There's another thing that I thought was my mind went exactly or similarly to where Costin's went. We actually had a surprise drop in from Sam Altman himself. The Twink Lord himself showed up.
Oh, wow.
It was fucking cool.
Did you get your selfie?
No. I kept my fanboying to myself, but no, Sam showed up and it was awesome because he didn't show up to do canned remarks or give us some bullshit talk and run out of the room. It was just 30 minutes of Q&A. Like just literally walked in, microphone, what do you guys want to talk about? And I asked the question, well, you now have this thing. When we crafted the Biden, when we were helping, let me not over-aggrandize our role as a community. When we were helping with the Biden cyber strategy, the big focus of the Biden cyber strategy was we need to shift the incentives because the dynamics in the space right now are incentivizing bad shit to happen, including all of this reliance on open source code that nobody has an incentive to maintain, nobody cares about fixing, and so on. So I asked Sam, like, okay, you just fucking blew it out of the water with a certain level of capability that you can now scale up to start to fix, to start to push back against this steady rate of entropy that's being introduced into the code that everybody needs. Are you going to take it as a humanitarian effort to essentially spin up those fucking GPUs and start going through all open source projects? Essentially, because that's what OpenAI is going to do. That's one of the benefits to humanity, right? Like to the extent that it still has some nonprofit mentality and they want to support, you're telling me you got this thing. You can sell it, sure, and you should sell it to whomever, but there's the other side of this, which is just the supporting of like the ecosystem. And like companies like Google and Meta and Microsoft have been supporting open source to some extent in their own way, but OpenAI is in a position to do something that none of them could have ever done before, which is to go, we've got all these GPUs sitting in the back doing jack shit right now, put them to scan all of whatever open source project we all rely on, and come out with a full security audit at a rolling, constant basis.
So you're asking the man for charity, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And his answer was?
That they were going to think about it.
No, I think Costin, I want to go back to the question Costin asked you, because you're saying about finding these bugs. Costin extrapolated into exploiting these bugs, building a model to do the full exploit.
Right.
For whom, right? Where do these bugs and exploits go?
I think the question is more, I would rather tackle this question along the lines of the Luta security mentality, the Katie Masuris school of thought, which is I'm not worried about the exploits. Honestly, I'm not worried about the exploits. I am worried because
Nobody
a
cares
lot of
about bugs.
no. But that's the point. I'm not worried about the exploits. I am interested in suddenly developing an understanding of the introduction of bugs at scale and how they result in big exploits, right? Like we're talking, if you tell me like all these little bugs just keep getting introduced little by little, little by little into the code base, then how many of the exploits we have seen were the result of somebody making a big categorical fuck up versus
Something
a bunch
systemic,
of
a
little
systemic
bugs?
problem, right?
Exactly. Like this Durkheim enemy style mentality of like, this is just a statistical certainty that it's going to continue to be introduced into any code base. I'm really fascinated by that. And then like, yeah, I am asking for charity to some degree, but I think it's almost like it comes great power, great responsibility, right? Like the reason we've been bitching about like the amount of power and compute, whatever that Google has, Microsoft has, or like the amount of IOCs telemetry that Microsoft has, and like, you're not sharing, you're not helping. It's because what these companies do publicly looks paltry compared to the capabilities that they have. And when you see a small company that comes out with some really cool security thing, you go, awesome, bro, well fucking done, thank you. When you see Google Tag come out with something of the same scale, you go, the fuck are you doing? And it's not because it's an unfair thing. It's because you say, hey, you guys have planet scale capability. You should be giving us something truly revolutionary. That's the expectation that I'm coming to OpenAI with now. You go, okay, you're going to take security seriously. I have no